Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. My family has owned this farm for over 150 years. Generation after generation, we've worked this land, raising cows and growing crops. My great-great-granddaddy built the original farmhouse with his bare hands. Sure, we've expanded and modernized over the years, but at its heart, this is still the same homestead he established all those years ago. So I was rightly shocked when I got a letter in the mail from some group calling itself the Rolling Hills Homeowners Association. Apparently, they had voted to annex my family's farm into their community. I'd have to pay dues, follow their rules, the whole 9 yards. But here's the thing. My farm ain't part of no neighborhood. We're a good 3 miles down an old dirt road from the nearest house in Rolling Hills. I've never considered my farm as being part of their community. Heck, I've never even spoken to anyone from Rolling Hills, unless you count waving to cars driving past. So I gave the homeowners associations a call to tell them thanks but no thanks. I figured they must have made a mistake including my land, but the man on the phone, who introduced himself as Homeowners Association's President Carl Walters, insisted it was no mistake. "Mr. Smith," he said in this uppity nasal voice, "your farm is an eyesore. Your cows wander wherever they please, leaving, shall we say, unsightly messes all over the road leading into our lovely community. And the smells? Well, we simply cannot allow such an unkempt property to remain at our front door any longer." I tried to explain that my land was in no way part of Rolling Hills, but Walters wouldn't hear it. He went on about how allowing my farm to remain independent would undermine the character and integrity of their neighborhood. "But I don't live in your neighborhood," I insisted. "My family has been on this farm for generations." Finally, Walters dropped the niceties and laid it out plain. "Mr. Smith, you either annex your farm voluntarily, or the homeowners associations will seize it through compulsory purchase. I trust you understand which option is preferable." Now my blood was boiling. This pompous blowhard thought he could just steal my family's legacy. I told Walters in no uncertain terms exactly where he could stick his annexation letter. That's when he made the threat. "Mr. Smith, the homeowners associations has already approved funding for a compulsory purchase. Our lawyers assure us that with the town councilman in our corner, we can take your farm with ease. Of course, it will drag through the courts for years, cost you a fortune in legal fees, and leave you bankrupt in the end. Wouldn't it be simpler to relinquish your land willingly?" The smug satisfaction in his voice made me see red, but getting angry wouldn't solve anything. I needed to fight this hostile takeover smart, not blind with fury. So I took a deep breath and told Walters I'd consult my lawyer before giving an answer. That caught him off guard. He clearly expected me to cave then and there. After I hung up, I called my cousin Luke, who's an estate attorney over in Clarksburg. He said these homeowners associations grabs aren't all that uncommon. Developers wanting more land to build cookie-cutter houses on. But Luke assured me that since Rolling Hills had no legal claim over my farm, their annexation wouldn't stand up in court. "Only issue is," Luke explained, "these cases can take years to settle and cost a fortune in legal fees. They're hoping you'll get discouraged and give up." "Not a chance," I said. "This farm is my legacy. No way am I letting some stuffed shirt developer take what's mine." Luke promised to start the appeals process and fight the annexation. In the meantime, he advised me to gather every scrap of documentation proving my family's ownership of the land. So I dug through old file cabinets and boxes in the attic, assembling land deeds, property maps, receipts of tax payments, anything proving this farm belonged to us long before Rolling Hills existed. I also rallied our neighbors from the nearby ranches and farms. None of them belonged to Rolling Hills either, and they were rightly worried the homeowners associations would try annexing their land too. We agreed to pool resources and fight this together. At Luke's recommendation, I also informed the County Agricultural Board. They were furious over this attack on local farming heritage. The board chairwoman, Marjorie Lewis, promised to speak at the town council meeting and expose the homeowners association's underhanded schemes. Finally, I reached out to the local newspaper and gave them the full story. Nothing grabs public attention like a David and Goliath tale of small farmers standing up to corporate bullies. The paper sent a reporter to interview me, and I gave her the complete rundown. She got fired up about exposing this injustice and assured me she'd run the story on the front page. Sure enough, the next morning there it was. Farmers Fight Homeowners Association's land grab splashed across the front page with pictures of me on my tractor. Within hours, I was getting calls from folks all over the county offering their support. They were sick of these homeowners associations throwing their weight around just to build more cookie-cutter subdivisions. This was about more than just my farm now. It was a stand for property rights and rural heritage. By the time the town council meeting rolled around, the place was packed with folks wearing Save Our Farms t-shirts. Homeowners associations. President Walters looked mighty uncomfortable when he took the podium, but he soon regained his arrogance. "This annexation is in the best interests of the greater community," Walters declared. "Rolling Hills is poised to become a model town, and we simply cannot allow dilapidated farms to tarnish our image." The crowd booed and hissed. Then Marjorie Lewis stepped up and set the record straight. "Mr. Walters," she said, "your so-called homeowners associations has no jurisdiction in this matter. The farm you seek to annex has been under Mr. Smith's family for generations. His grandfather was one of the founding members of our agricultural community back in 1932. She went on to explain that the homeowners associations was established long after my family's farm and had no legal authority over my private property. "These annexations are merely a scheme to expand your subdivision," Marjorie said. "You seek to erase our proud farming heritage for short-term profits. On behalf of agricultural communities across this county, I urge you to cease these unjust land grabs immediately." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause. Walters tried to regain control, but he was drowned out by furious citizens. Ultimately, the council voted unanimously against allowing any annexations to proceed until a full legal review could be completed. Afterwards, folks came up to shake my hand and pat me on the back. I have to admit it felt pretty good seeing our whole community unite against that bully Walters. In the following weeks, letters poured in from all over the country. Seems our little land dispute had struck a chord nationwide. Folks everywhere were fed up with homeowners associations throwing their weight around. Our story inspired rural communities to stand up and fight back. As for my farm, the county ultimately ruled that Rolling Hills had no valid claim to annex my land. The homeowners associations was prohibited from purchasing my property or taking any actions against me. Walters was forced to resign as homeowners association's president in disgrace. Luke says we've got grounds for a civil suit against the homeowners associations for harassment and intimidation. But after the public humiliation Walters suffered, I figure that's punishment enough. The fight took time away from my crops and cattle, but it was worth defending my family's legacy. This farm's been in our hands 150 years, and I reckon it'll stay that way for 150 more. I'm proud we were able to bring folks together and deliver a clear message. You can't bully honest farmers and steal our heritage. If we stick together and keep speaking truth, these homeowners associations bullies won't stand a chance. They picked the wrong fight when they targeted my family's farm, but they awakened a righteous spirit of solidarity that will endure long after this battle fades. So bring on the next fight. I know we'll be ready. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I went to middle school in the early 2010s, right before smartphones really took off. I got my first phone right before starting 6th grade. It was a slide phone with a pay-as-you-go plan that cost $0.10 per minute for calls and per text message sent or received. Worse yet, sending or receiving photos cost $0.25 each. It was very expensive, and my parents only gave me $100 a year for this. If I exceeded the amount, I had to cover the rest with my limited birthday and Christmas money. Fortunately, most of my friends were good about helping me preserve the balance. They would call, and I'd let the call drop, but immediately call back on a landline so it wouldn't count as a call. They'd email me or message me on Skype for most things. Everything was good until Derek joined the group in 7th grade. At first we thought he was funny, but we quickly got fed up with him as he was very unpleasant and exhibited many antisocial behaviors. He started drama within the friend group and also caused issues between us and other kids outside of the group. He was manipulative and always played the victim when others rightfully called him out on his behavior, and he knew how to charm parents, so getting rid of him was easier said than done. He was the one friend who didn't respect my phone situation. He very frequently texted me dumb memes, even though I told him multiple times to just email or Skype them to me instead, since picture text messages cost $0.25 each. Unfortunately, blocking phone numbers was a feature that was unavailable for this pay-as-you-go plan, so there was nothing I could do as he spammed my phone. One day he got mad at me for some reason and spammed my phone with memes. He must have sent me over 100 lolcats over text. He kept sending them until I lost service since my phone balance was depleted. I had lost the $40 remaining in my account as a result. I was extremely upset and demanded that he pay me the $40 he had cost me, but he refused and said it wasn't his problem. I got home from school really upset and told my dad about the situation, expecting him to go and tear Derek's mother a new one and demand the money. But my dad said that it wasn't worth the battle. I even asked him about small claims court, but he said that not all battles are worth fighting, and that the effort wasn't worth $40. He took me to the carrier store and loaded $50 onto the phone. The carrier changed my phone number and they managed to block Derek's number. They had initially said that blocking phone numbers wasn't possible with this plan, but my dad insisted and would not leave the store until they did it. I was extremely paranoid about my phone number being leaked and other kids spamming it to mess with me. Fortunately, my parents got iPhones that summer and got me one too, and the new family plan had an unlimited text plan. Nonetheless, I was angry about the $40 he essentially stole from me out of malice. Fortunately, not too long after, there was a big blowout between Derek and the rest of the friend group at the end of the school year, and we permanently kicked him out of the group. He was an outcast the following year in 8th grade. Nobody was tolerating his behavior anymore, and he changed schools the year after, and we never heard from him again. Fast forward to a few years ago, I was back home for a few months between graduating college and starting a new job on the other side of the country. I went out to some garage sales one Saturday morning and ended up at Derek's house. I recognized his mother, but I don't think she recognized me. I guess glasses and a beard are all you need. I noticed some Pokemon napkins out for sale, and when I picked them up to look at them, Derek's mom said that her son had been obsessed with Pokemon for his whole life, and that she was tired of Pokemon stuff occupying her home for so many years. I said that these napkins were for my younger cousin who is really into Pokemon, and asked if she had any more Pokemon stuff. She said she didn't know people were still into that and that there were a few boxes in the attic with her son's old stuff. She actually took me inside the house, which I never imagined I'd set foot inside ever again, and let me climb up the attic ladder and take down several large boxes to look through. The first one had Christmas ornaments in it and other junk, but I was excited when she opened a box jam-packed with Pokemon video games in the original boxes, though I kept my cool on the outside. The whole reason I had agreed to go inside in the first place was that I was holding out hope for this exact scenario happening. See, I knew Derek was obsessed with Pokemon. Our friend group liked Pokemon back in the day, even when other kids thought it wasn't cool, but Derek was on a whole different level. He bragged about his Pokemon collection all the time. At the time, he had every single main series game in the original box, and in mint condition as he always had to add in. I went to his house once and he was showing me his collection. He yelled at me for touching one of the games. Nobody was allowed to touch them except him. He had many older Nintendo games in excellent condition, but Pokemon was his favorite. He had had a couple of incidents with his mom damaging or throwing away his things. It wasn't out of malice, but just ignorance, as she didn't think the games or collectibles had any value. Fast forward to the present day, I was thinking about this when I asked his mother if she had any other Pokemon stuff. She ended up bringing out the mother load. We opened all of the boxes she had me bring down. Within the boxes were the beloved collection of Pokemon games, all very well preserved, as well as several Nintendo consoles, hundreds of games, 24 binders full of Pokemon cards, and there was also a box of many Lego sets with the original boxes and everything, with many old Star Wars sets. When I saw Jango Fett, I knew I struck gold. I told her that I liked old Legos as well, and asked her how much for the 5 boxes of games, cards, and Lego sets, and she thought for a second and said $100 a box, or $400 for all 5. I told her I would take it all and hauled ass to get to an ATM. I loaded the 5 boxes into my dad's truck and immediately drove home. I knew there was potentially tens of thousands of dollars of goods here. This was the score of a lifetime, and I finally felt vindicated for the $40 Derek had taken from me all those years ago. I ended up giving all the stuff to my uncle, who's a hobbyist eBay reseller. He offered to sell it all. He was willing to go through the effort and sell everything individually, and despite my insistence, He said he wouldn't take more than a 10% cut of the profits after all fees and taxes. We went through and logged every single item along with the estimated value, and the total of the whole lot was about $40,000. 40,000 was a poetic number since this was 1,000 times the value of what Derek stole from me all those years ago. My uncle sold most of the lot before the end of the summer and ended up writing me a check. Though it was considerably less than $40,000, it was still a life-changing amount of money for me. I was able to pay off my remaining student loans and put the rest towards a down payment on a new car. The next one is a petty revenge story. We rented a flat above a shop. The carpets were old, stained, and had several cigarette burns, but we had noted the damage when we moved in. The electrics were awful. If the fridge or water heater fired up while using the oven or kettle, it would trip the fuse board. We informed him via multiple emails about this, and he simply told us not to have too many items on at the same time. We found that the overflow on the bath wasn't connected. One day, when I overfilled it and got in, the water went into the overflow hole, but simply came out from under the bath. It also went through the ceiling into the shop below, dripping down her light fittings. Obviously, she came up to find out what was happening, so we took the side panel off the bath and saw the problem. We soaked it up and told the landlord about the issue. He said it wasn't a problem and that we should be more careful about filling up the bath too much. Eventually, we moved out and he refused to give us our deposit back, citing damage to the carpets and that he had had to replace them. He actually sent us the invoice. We contacted the company, who confirmed that they had not only recarpeted our flat, but also the other 3 in the block and the hallway. We started a claim against him in court, but in the meantime, fate took over. 5 months later, we saw in the local paper that our old flat had had a fire. We saw that the fire investigation officer was looking into an electrical fault. We contacted the FIO and told him about our experience with the electrics. We forwarded all the emails. Shortly after, we received a call from an insurance company. They had received the claim and also received the FIO report, but wanted to be sure. They also wanted copies of all the emails and our experience. About a week later, we received an email that thanked us for our help and stated that as a result, they had refused the claim. A total of £200,000 of damage was denied. To top it all off, when we went to court, the court returned our deposit in full. The next one is a malicious compliance story. At my most recent former employer, a home improvement store in the vein of Lowe's or Home Depot, I worked in receiving, mostly unloading trucks with a forklift. About 2 years into my time there, we got a new assistant store manager. Let's call him Gary. This guy came in and thought that not only did his crap not stink, but that we should all eat as much of it as possible. Micromanaging, changing SOP, etc. Everything he said was right. So one day, a truck is in the process of backing down the ramp to our receiving docks, but there's a problem with the brakes, and the wheels are just dragging. Since my job at that moment is wait until the truck comes in and unload it once it does, there's literally nothing I can really do apart from give the dude good vibes from my seat. To be clear, the problem was not any failing on the driver's part, just bad luck with the hoses. At this time of day, we have 2 people on the clock in receiving, me on one forklift waiting for the truck, and my department manager on another, helping out in the outside yard because 2 propane forklifts were disabled, and they had 2 lumber trucks show up at the same time. We only had 2 electric forks, and they were the only ones that could be inside the building. Redacted to protect those with no sense of humor. So basically, I'm literally all alone on the only available forklift that can unload the truck, which is fine because that's my ducking jam. At the same time, we only had 1 dock of 3 available for live loads because one already had an unhooked trailer and the other was broken. So while we're understaffed and short of equipment, and while the driver is trying to unduck his truck, Gary walks into receiving with 2 other department managers and sees me sitting on the forklift, basically just twiddling my thumbs as I watch the driver. I can understand how it might look like I'm ducking off, since I kind of am, but not really. "Why are you just sitting there?" Gary asks me. "Waiting for the truck to back up," I say. He says, "While you're waiting, you can do other things." I look out the dock door and see the driver come out from between the truck and trailer and get back in the cab, so I say, "But he's almost got it. He'll be docked in like a minute." And in that minute, you can do other things. I've had more than my share of crappy leaders in my life, and I can tell by Gary's tone and body language that nothing is going to shake him from this attitude, so I just say, "You got it, what should I do while I wait?" Gary says, "Go outside and help unload one of the lumber trucks." I say, "For how long?" Sounding annoyed, he waves his hands in a shooing motion and says, "For as long as it takes. Now go." Then he walks away. The two department managers look at each other, look at me, smile, and follow after him. They know what's about to happen. "Hey, buddy, you got it. I'm absolutely going to do this for you." So I spin the forklift around and zip out through the big overhead door into the outside yard to help with the lumber trucks. As I do this, I hear the trailer back into the dock. But that doesn't matter because Gary gave me a mission. I make it to where the lumber trucks are parked in the yard, and my department manager drives over next to me. He says, "Why are you out here? Isn't the truck docking?" I nod. Gary told me I needed to be out here helping while I wait. He was very insistent. I slowly emphasize the last two words. My manager just smiles, turns around, and continues to unload. I start helping. A stack of studs here, a bundle of trusses there, and I'm doing my part to empty these flatbeds of wood. While this is happening, I hear the gate attendant for the outside yard radio that we have another truck waiting to come in. I radio back that it's going to have to wait until the other truck is gone. Then another truck shows up, and another. In the 20 minutes I've been outside, 4 trucks besides the one that is now in the dock have arrived to be unloaded in our single dock, and every time I tell the gate that they have to wait. At this point, the general store manager, Mike, finally hears what's happening over the radio and cuts in. "Hey, what's going on? Are we not unloading the truck and receiving?" I radio back and say, "I'll be there in just a second." I put the load I've got on my tines where it needs to go and haul ass back to receiving. As I drive into the bay, Mike and Gary are both standing there, with the driver next to them. I zip up to them and hold my hand out for the driver's paperwork. He hands it to me as Gary says, "What the hell is taking you so long? Why haven't you started unloading yet?" "You told me to help on the lumber trucks while I wait," I say. Gary sputters and says, "I meant until this truck was in the dock." I look at Mike and then back to Gary. "I asked you for how long and you said for as long as it takes." I didn't say that. I look at him and he looks at me like he's daring me. And I like taking dares. I name the 2 department managers who were with him when he told me and say, "We all heard you say it. You were very clear." His face turns the color of an apple, and not like a Fuji or Gala, but a red ducking delicious. He opens his mouth, but Mike puts a hand on his arm and stops him. Mike looks at me and says, "Get it sorted fast, okay?" I nod and get started as Mike walks away with Gary fuming beside him. Now I didn't hear their conversation because I was kicking ass and taking names on my forklift, but word got back to me that Mike told Gary he would never again be allowed to question anything anyone in receiving does, and especially me when it comes to unloading trucks. If I'm on a forklift, I'm basically untouchable. And over the next year that Gary was with us, he abided by that directive, though he did feel entitled to shoot me a dirty glance or 20 every so often. Not that I cared because I had trucks to unload. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.